Welcome to SNB Podcast, where we provide our views on the economy, capital markets, geopolitics, and emerging technologies. I'm your host, Sam Bale, the founder of Future Capital Partners, or FCP, with my good friend and your co-host, John Sinclair. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, I'm John Sinclair. I'm a corporate strategy specialist with deep expertise in growth and turnaround strategies. I've also designed and delivered some of the most complex transformation programs for some of the Fortune 500 companies as well as late-stage startups with many success and some setbacks. So my goal is to hopefully I could share some of those experiences with you and make this conversation exciting.
Thank you, John. I know we have a lot of offline conversation about this topic. Smart cities is an exciting topic as usual. In today's podcast, we want to find out what is a smart city and what are the key benefits, risks, and what is the best approach, because this concept has been floating around for a while, but we have not seen to a mature or full manifestation. So that being said, just give us, what is a smart city?
Well, in a simplistic term, a smart city is usually a cities or municipalities or government agencies that are leveraging information and communication technology, or ICT, to help improve the quality of life of their citizen, how they work, how they live, and of course also to make sure that they're also securing the environmental, social sustainability, right? And I think that what's really driving the need is because of the population growth in the urban areas, right? So I'll pause there and then...
Can you give us an example of ICT, or information and communication technologies, for our user to understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, that's a hard question. All right, I'll try my best to give you the answer. So ICT, it's a combination of many technology and services, right? So ICT, it could be your cloud technologies, your enabling technologies like communications for, like, say, 5G. You've got, advanced analytics, data science, machine learning algorithm, IoT sensors, and all the hardware and software, including all the applications that collectively enables a smart city.
So those are the technology that enables the smart city concept.
Correct. Also, most important piece is the funding, right? I know that's your area of interest, right? It's going to require significant partnership between the private, public, as well as the community as a whole, right? The people that are living in a smart city.
Got it. So why now? Why smart cities now, and why do we need them, and what are the benefits?
Yeah. So why now, right? So I think the primary driver for smart city, I would say, is probably twofold, right? One, when you're living in we're living in a global economy. It's not just that every country is competing with each other to attract more businesses to come set up shop. Every cities and municipalities, every states are competing with each other, right? Because they want a lot of businesses come there. More business means more job is more revenue, right? So that's that. And the secondary aspect is this. I think it's the population growth, right? If you look at today, billions of people are living, I would say 55% of the world's population live in urban areas, right, in big cities. And the projection is in the next 3 decades, by 2055, that number is going to go up to 66%, or adding 2.5 billion population. Just think about what impact it will have, socioeconomic impact, right, on the society. How do you sustain it with that much people moving into urban areas, right? So I think those are the two things. I guess, being able to attract more businesses to their respective cities or countries, and also to have a sustainable model to support such population growth.
And I think other thing you touched upon, environment sustainability, can contribute to this, environment sustainability. So that being said, what is the key benefits, if you can highlight the key benefits of a smart city?
So the first and foremost, I think it's the quality of life of your citizen. And what I mean by that is, if you live in a smart city, you want proactive as a service model, right? So if there is, let's just say, in a water supply in the city, there is some sort of a contamination, the city ought to be able to know and react and resolve that problem proactively, right? Having the sensor data technology and the data and analytic, they should be able to identify, inform its citizen, and be able to address it rather fast, right? Then think about crime is a big issue in urban areas, right? So having smart surveillance model, it'll probably, if not significantly reduce, it'll probably eliminate crime, right? Given the fact now you're able to capture data from thousands, if not millions of sensors across the city, across every transportation, right? Whether it's a train, buses, or even cars, right? With that level of data in real time visibility, I think it'll be a huge deterrent for crime and criminals, right? Also, having everything that you do in a daily basis, right, as a service, meaning think about smart transport, right? The ability to go from point A to point B, and whether it's in a smart city is the whole goal. Also, the smart city is to reduce how many people are driving cars, as opposed to building this very sustainable public transportation system where most people will leverage that. And then you're going to see more and more in smart cities. It will decline, a personal car ownership, right? Because there'll be no need for that, or the need will be very minimal. And then you're going to see this emergence of autonomous vehicle. You'll have these the autonomous vehicle grid, right? Basically, you could get a car, a fully automated car or a taxi, showing up at your house at the time you want to leave for work or take your kids to school or pick them up automatically and on time, right? So you're going to see all these benefits that makes your the way you live, the way you work, the way you entertain yourself, right? And also, I mean, it's more than that, right? So also think about how much time we spend today, like going into doing minute tasks, like dealing with the city government, right? Going into the municipalities, paying your phone bill, paying your electric bill, or paying a parking fine or whatever, right? Or a speeding ticket, right? So imagine having all those administrative tasks that every individual does on a day-to-day basis, apart from having a full-time job and supporting a family. All those things could be consolidated into something. You could probably do that directly from your talking to your television or your cell phone, or or any mobile devices, right? Automatically, and you'll have a complete visibility, almost like a dashboard, every aspect of your life, meaning how much utility, how much electric are you using in your household, how much water you use, right? How much bill are you paying, right? And being able to make intelligent decision on your spend, on the way you live, and of course how you are contributing to the environment, things like that.
Got it. And so what are the key enablers of smart city? What are components that we need to put together to bring smart cities into a manifestation?
Yeah. Well, the first and foremost, I think this is the perfect time. So I'm strictly speaking about United States. I'm assuming that's what you're asking. Or are you talking about globally?
Up to you.
Okay,
Why don't you give us both? Yeah, first United States and globally.
So United States, this is a perfect opportunity because 5G, we're at we just started, right? So 5G is definitely an important component because of the connectivity density, right? How many IoT device it could concurrently support. It's about 1 million IoT devices connectivity in a 0.37 square kilometer, right? So that's almost like a 3-point-some million IoT devices communicating in a square mile, right? Mm-hmm. So this is huge. So that wasn't possible in a 4G or 4G LTE. This is significant improvement. So that's one. Secondly is investments. So now because of this, the 5G is enabling this, you're going to see a significant investment going into the ecosystem of all these smart technologies, right? Whether it's a smart home, smart manufacturing, smart power plants, all of that stuff, right? The next thing, it has to be an open data platform, because today, up until now, especially in the United States, because for us, it's a big, we hold it near and dear to our heart, right? One is the privacy, and second is civil liberty, right? We want to make sure that while we want to enjoy the benefit that smart technology brings forth, by the same token, we're not compromising those precious rights that we get to enjoy, right? And of course, the trust. The trust is extremely important because if for smart city to be successful, it's not just the private public partnership, but you have to have the citizens of the city have to participate in that smart city planning and implementation. And how do you do that? That means you have to share all your data. That means your behavior pattern. How do you live? How do you spend? What's your entertainment schedule? What type of a movie you like to watch? How much time do you spend? Right, things like that. Right. So all these data today, we are sharing those data to a certain degree to a very specific users. Like Netflix would know the type of movie I like to watch, right? My AT&T knows because the fact, they probably have a lot more information because they get to see all my network traffic. So they know where I'm shopping, they know what I'm buying when I order food from outside, right? Then think about all these the smart connected devices you have in your home, like a smart thermostat, smart fridge, smart camera, that nanny cam that you get to watch your children or even monitor your family when you're away from home. So now all these data that is being collected and stored by these individual hardware software vendors. Now you'll have to kind of give permission to an open data platform where all these data is going to be, visible to the smart city, lack of a better word, let's just say control center, right? They ought to be able to look at that data, analyze data, and identify what are the services they can cater to your specific need, right? So that's fantastic, right? I think that's important. But it's important that you also earning the trust of your citizens, because if you don't earn the trust, you're not going to be able to have them contribute to the smart city. And of course, finally, the most important piece is the security elements of that. The security elements is not just that important just for the individual citizens, right? But the security meaning a smart city is everything connected. Your water supply, your electricity, your waste management, your traffic, your garbage collection, right? Everything is connected, right? That's how you're able to provide proactive and real-time services. So imagine, if you don't have an entire security infrastructure designed to protect all these the core elements of a smart city infrastructure, they're highly vulnerable to either hacking by individuals. It could be hacking by foreign actors, our adversaries, right? And also, not to mention, it could also hack individual information, right? And under a wrong hand, it could be used in a very nefarious ways, right? So those are the elements. That's why security is paramount. And I guess finally, I would say that another thing that is really important, updating our laws, right? Our laws of the land. I mean, because you have to definitely update the laws to make sure that data privacy is well maintained. Doesn't get abused. You have to make sure that our civil liberty doesn't get compromised, right? Inadvertently. I'm sure nobody means to take control of all their citizens, but just in case, you never know, right? So all these laws have to be updated, right? So I think, in a nutshell, I think those are the elements. And of course, money is important, the investments, right? But I think because the promise of smart city and how this is going to revolutionize the world as a whole, right? And such demand for it. So I don't think there's going to be a big issue on the investment side. I think you're going to see a tremendous from your side of the world for private equities and venture capitalists and, of course, the hedge funds. You're going to see a tremendous investment going into this. That's going to be a huge capital infusion, both from the investment side as well as the government entities, right? So, but that's important, right? So I think those are the ones.
So those are the one from United States perspective or globally? I'm assuming it's similar to global, global audience as well.
Yeah. I mean, what differentiate the two is this. Not every country that are really advanced today on smart city enjoy the same, the democratic systems as we're accustomed to, right, in the United States, right? So that's really important. That's a key differentiation. Also, the user data, like data privacy and civil liberty, is very different in China and in places like Dubai, right? It's definitely very different. Also, I think it's kind of beneficial for the United States because sometimes it's not the best to be the early adapter of a technology. it's okay to be a late entrant, because by being a late entrant, it allows us to observe the early adapters, the type of investment they have to make, and all the expensive lessons they had to learn that allow us to design our smart cities minus all the negative elements or the lessons learned from observing all the existing implementations, right? Like, for example, Singapore, Amsterdam, looking at some of the Dubai, also Shenzhen in China, right? Places like that. And it allows us to design our society, the whole structure of smart city in ways to make sure that we don't, replicate things we don't like, and take the ones that really is beneficial for the society as a whole.
Got it. And could you also touch upon why it takes longer for us to get into this market, for lack of better words, compared to China and Dubai? Because I think earlier you touched upon, because in order to implement projects as such, we have to go through a different due diligence process than compared to China and Dubai. So give us a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Well, in an autocratic governmental structure, decisions are pretty centralized, right? It's pretty much being done from a small group of people, and it's done, right? But the United States, we're a nation of law. We have very specific, very stringent, law to protect our citizens' privacy, making sure that we don't inadvertently, take away people's civil liberty and compromise their constitutional rights and things like that. Also, I mean, the litigation, how for example, if something goes wrong, how lawsuits are handled in the United States, you could pretty much sue almost anybody. It's much easier to sue someone in court for experiencing any adverse reaction or adverse impact of any technology implementation, or even, medical, right? That's not the same in other countries in the world. So I think the risk tolerance and the threshold is very different to the countries you mentioned and versus how we have it in the United States. But also, most importantly, also the money, the investment is significant. So if you really look at Dubai, this was a massive investment from the Dubai government, the United Arab Emirates, right? There was significant investment from the Chinese government in Shenzhen, right? Or even Singapore. They made a conscious decision in saying they're going to invest in this. They truly believed in that the potential of what smart city provides. In the United States, I mean, we really have to do our due diligence. It's a lot more stringent here to make sure that we're not just only covering the technology aspect of it, but we're also covering the legality of it, the sustainability of it, right, and the scalability of it, right? How do we implement something? And also remember, this is the financial capital of the world. I mean, some of the most advanced technology innovations and anything you think about, all the major transformation in the society has gone through is happens in the United States. This is the beacon of hope for the rest of the world. People come here. Every business in the world wants to have a business, have an office, a presence in the United States, right? So it's so remember, we still have to make sure when we implement something that is so disruptive that we don't inadvertently introduce risk to our existing system, which is it's a sizable economy, right? I mean, $21 trillion economy. So we have to make sure that when we're introducing something in the United States, that we definitely do some proper due diligence, right? So that's basically it.
So what are the major obstacles as of now that you have seen that are in our ways to implement the concept of smart city?
Yeah. So I think that there is smart city, the elements of smart city already exist within the United States, right? Because I know that just Denver already started that, right? In the West Coast in California, there's already have certain elements of smart city already exist, right? For example, Scottsdale. I mean, you drive through a certain neighborhood and you just get a ticket in your home automatically because there is smart camera surveillance systems monitoring your driving pattern, and if you're going over the speed limit, you're getting fined, right? So why is it taking so? Is that the question was? Why is it taking so long?
Taking so long, and the obstacles so far, yeah.
So the obstacle is first and foremost is the investment, because if you think about who's bringing forth the 5G technology in the United States, it's the communication service provider, right? Mm-hmm. Like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and them, right? these are multi-billion-dollar investments. I mean, this is huge. This is a multi-year undertaking. So that's one. These are publicly traded companies, so they have to weigh the risk with reward and how cautious they are in how they're investing it. Secondly, they have to also look at impact to the overall, the existing technology. So, for example, as you heard after we implemented, the rolled out 5G in the U.S., there was significant concern around 737 commercial aircraft, right? Because it was interfering with its altimeter and the reading the distance from the ground to the aircraft, right? So that was a concern. But there was also other concerns around health, not fully vetted, but nonetheless these are concerns, right? And they all have to be looked at. So the first is, of course, the investment. That is huge undertaking. So thank God that has already happened. I mean, because that's why it's coming to fruition. You also have to address any of these major concerns that make sure it doesn't interfere with existing systems like aircraft.
And the earlier point you touched upon, data is important to implement this concept of smart cities. So right now the data is owned by vendors, right? So it's a fragmented data. Why is that an obstacle?
Yeah, so fragmented data, I guess it's a blessing and a curse, right? Blessing in a sense up until now. I'm talking about, again, strictly United States. Because, right now I have a TV sets and I have a smart box that I listen and watch all these streaming services, right? That data is only going to one company or maybe two. My refrigerator, smart fridge information going to, say, Samsung, right? So yes, I am sharing data. We all are, but it's going into a certain vendors. But the problem with that is, the fragmented data, it's also a major impediment to innovation because 5G opens up this massive opportunity to innovate, right? You've got these ecosystems, all these of IoT players, right? And all these sensor manufacturers, they want to create so many things to transform smart homes. Because today, smart homes is still your experience is kind of sort of limited because it's not the end-to-end user experience, right? Because data is not shared across all the the IoT vendors, right? Same thing with the industrial manufacturing space. So having the fragmented data, it's like I said, it was a blessing in a sense that your data is not widely available to a general major open data platform. But it also, because you're not able to share the data, it's difficult to create or innovate with products that will give you that whole, the holistic end-to-end experience, right? Immersive experience, right? Because then all these smart devices can talk to each other and create even newer, better products, right? Another thing is these smart devices. So, for example, your smart thermostat. It's expensive, right? For consumer to embrace all these smart technologies as a society as a whole, it has to be affordable. So now that 5G is enabling the amount of device density support, right? And you're going to see a lot more open data platform, and there's a lot of collaboration and cooperation taking place with the CSPs, and I don't mean cloud services provider. I'm talking about communication services provider and software vendors and hardware vendors. So definitely you're going to see innovation at scale, right? That hasn't happened even a year ago. You'll definitely see that. But it also introduces a significant amount of risk now. What does that mean for your data? Now it's going into this massive centralized platform. Who owns it? Who's going to have control of all that data, right? You could easily inadvertently introduce data monopoly, right? You could also inadvertently expose this massive amount of data to foreign adversaries, to hacking, right? Something like that. So anyway, so those are the things.
So what is the solutions around the fragmented data?
So the fragmented data, the key solution, the way I look at it is that how do we create an open data sharing platform that everyone can access, everyone can leverage, and at the same time provide adequate protection to the consumers, device manufacturers, whether it's a hardware or software, to making sure, one, it does not get compromised and get used, inadvertently gets used something that could be detriment to the population or the society as a whole, right? So you have to look at first and foremost is the ecosystem of players that are designing security for smart cities, right? That is going to be extremely important. So the security, when I say security, I don't mean just like a consumer device data security, right? You're not just to maintain your privacy. In a smart city, I mean, the security is a big deal because every single service you receive from a smart city, right? Whether it's electricity, water, transportation, is all centrally managed, right? So if that gets compromised, it will impact every single population of that city, right? That's extremely important. So I mean holistic end-to-end security for that. The second thing is, I saw many articles, and I read, and they frame it. The consumer or the citizens must trust smart city. I absolutely don't like the word must trust. I think trust needs to be earned, and I think only way people are going to trust, these mass data collection and usage for smart city purpose once they start recognizing how solid the security structure is. Because today, I mean, every other day you wake up, you hear about some security breach, right? And it compromises, and forget the government entities, but in a government entity, they have deep pocket. What happens to consumers, right? A data breach, a credit card fraud, your title fraud, whatever. It could completely destroy your life, right? So it's a very different, when you look at security from the lens of a consumer versus a large large corporations or government entities, right? So that has to be addressed, right? So now let's talk about data, right? So we talked about the risk with decentralized data, right? It's a key impediment to innovation. So the answer is we need a centralized data platform, right? Which is open data platform. Well, anything that is open, it also has to be. Then the question becomes, who owns it, right?
So you mean like a decentralized, centralized data platform?
That's right.
Right.
Well said. I was struggling to come up with that word, but thank you. I appreciate that. But that's exactly what it is. So if you think about SWIFT, I think we kind of touched on that in our last episode, right?
Yeah.
The financial systems, right? The SWIFT. SWIFT does not control your financial, transaction, right? What it does it's a messaging platform, right? It's a global messaging platform that is basically monitoring every single financial transaction that is taking place, leveraging the SWIFT system. They want to know what type of transaction, who's the sender, who's the receiver, the frequency, all that stuff, right? And it's fantastic because it is not owned by just in a single entity, right? And it also allows a proper governance structure with a level of transparency required to make sure that no nefarious action is taking place. So we need. How did you frame it? You said open data platform, decentralized, centralized. Yeah. So I think we need something equivalent of a SWIFT that will do that, that will provide that governance and the security assurance to make sure this does not gets manipulated or gets compromised, right? Because if you don't have trust on the integrity of the data, because if a data gets under the wrong hands, and if it's accessible by anybody and everyone, it could easily get manipulated. And if your data is not good, if the integrity of data isn't there, the output of the service, because smart city is what? In essence, it's leveraging all the data sets, analyzing the data, designing services, and deploying it to the citizens as needed. So if your data sets is not good, if it's compromised, doesn't have the integrity, it's gonna undermine and compromise the quality of service to your citizens, right? So I think, what we talked about? We talked about the data. Mm-hmm. We talked about the security aspect of the fixing this, right? I think the next thing I would think about is the investments, right? But I think that maybe, I would say, probably an encouraging news because of the fact the promise of smart city is so big. It's not just a one thing. It's not just the sensor makers. You're looking at autonomous vehicle, the innovation that's going to take place, continue to, right? You're looking at the products, whether it's a residential product, whether it's a commercial product, whether it's an industrial manufacturing product, for all these to enable all these smart capabilities. You're going to see a significant innovation. You're going to see manufacturing of all these new capabilities that's going to come to market very fast, right? So that basically means there's significant interest in investment, right, from private equities, from the fund managers, and then the venture capitalists, right? So in this area, I don't believe there's going to be any issue with investment. I think there's a tremendous amount of interest in this arena, and there is tremendous amount of fund available, both from the government entities, the public and private. So I think that's tremendous. And I think that everything has to be kind of make sure that, whatever it is we do, and how fast we bring a specific city or a state into a complete smart city umbrella, the most important piece, I would say, is earning the trust of your citizens. Because if they don't trust in the security and the integrity of the data collection, data retention, and data distribution, its entire process, you're going to have very difficult time having people trust in it and participate in that process.
Got it. So those are the obstacles, and from an investment standpoint, I think a lot of private equity, hedge funds, managers aren't investing because they can't define the risks, right? So that being said, why don't you give us what are the risks? How can we prevent this concept to become a Orwellian state? So we don't want people to give up their liberty for efficiency.
Yeah. I didn't want to go so dark, but nonetheless, it is a fair question you ask, right? Let me just tell you this from observing what we are witnessing. So, if you look at smart city implementation at Shenzhen, China, right? Man, this is beautiful. I mean, what they have done. I mean, it's truly everything is automated. Crime is down. Even jaywalking. I mean, somebody could get a ticket. From a smart city surveillance system, the smart cameras could capture you doing a jaywalk, and it could mail you a ticket automatically. In a high-rise building, if somebody's throwing garbage, and they could find the offender, and they'll issue citation, right? Definitely, these things act as a deterrent, but there's also a lot of benefit, meaning they can serve their citizens in an automated fashion, in a proactive fashion. But the dark side of that is now you've got a surveillance capability that was designed to reduce crime, a noble purpose. Now it's completely weaponized against the citizens because now it's becoming a surveillance state where people can't do anything. They have no civil liberty. They have pretty much, you're dependent upon, at the mercy of whoever is writing the algorithm and determining what behavior is acceptable. Right? In China's social credit system, in essence, you have to live a certain way as determined by the government. And moment you deviate from that, you'll be your social credit score or social score will be reduced, and you'll be penalized. And after you reach a certain lower threshold, you are cut off from many services to live in a part of society, right? In a smart city, meaning you could be denied even entry to a public transportation, right? You could be denied entry to an aircraft, right? Things like that. Your life could be absolutely ruined. So that is a very dark elements of where it could go, right? In Dubai, as you're driving, if you speed, you just get a ticket right to your mobile device, right? It's great for the city because it's creating a brand new revenue, generating opportunity. But at the same time, you're giving up your entire civil liberty, right? So, I mean, think about it this way. Because of the centralized data model in these countries, so let's just talk about China for a second, right? They have complete knowledge of every single car that is parked in every location at any given time. So think about that for a second. That means they know that every movement by every citizen. So now if you have if you're a politician, and you want to go to a fundraising, or wherever you're going, your opposition party, whoever is in power, I mean, in China's case, it doesn't matter. It's the autocratic system. They could pretty much monitor your every move, and they could deny you a certain service, access to a certain venue, access to certain services, like getting into an airplane or whatever, right? So this could get really bad, right? So we're witnessing that already. So we just have to be cognizant of that. And that's one of the reasons why I talked about earlier that being a late entrant is not a bad thing because it allows us to observe what we have seen in China, in Singapore, what we have seen in Amsterdam. So we saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. It allows our lawmakers to craft new laws that will make sure that we have adequate safeguard and adequate deterrent if somebody does break the rule, what would that mean, right? It also allows to make sure that we design and implement a decentralized, centralized data, governance structure similar to SWIFT, to make sure that there is no single owner of the data. So it will never have a monopoly, whether by a government agency or a big tech, or even an individual, right? To make sure that, and of course, another thing is the anonymity of user data, right? You can take a user information in a system like this. For example, your behavior pattern. That's okay. So you could take that data and you could design new products and services and introduce to the market, right, to generate revenue. But it's not okay when your personally identifying information is completely exposed. That means you basically in an autocratic system or nefarious, government actors, pretty much know your every move, right? With the facial recognition technology today, we're able to catch criminals in a train station or an airport, in a public places. But in a smart city, think about it for a second. You may have a babysitter that you were not aware, may or may not have a green card, may be living in the country illegally. All of a sudden, you turn on your system, next thing you know, the INS shows up in your house and arresting your babysitter. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to break the law, but I'm just trying to say that how things could go wrong very quickly, right? Mm-hmm. And under a draconian type or authoritarian type of government, right? So we have to be cognizant of that, right? As we are embarking in this, I think we can all agree that opportunity, especially from financial services, right? I think there's significant opportunity for investment. I think there's going to be significant return on investment. I just think that hopefully this conversation will educate the investors and technology leaders and corporate C-suites like CTO, CIO, CDO with adequate knowledge as they're embracing these technology, as they're building services around this, to make sure they're aware the dark side of it and what safeguard they will have to adapt to make sure we don't repeat some of the mistakes, or maybe intentional in some cases, in other smart city implementation elsewhere.
So you laid out the risks really well, and give us the fix. Like, how can we fix it? I think this is a perfect segue to this topic.
Yeah. So the fix is basically, look, like I said, I think I kind of touched upon that. I think the decentralized, centralized data, it has to happen, right? If you don't have this decentralized governance structure with an absolute security layer to making sure that data integrity does not get compromised, that has to happen because that is a prerequisite to trust. You cannot have a smart city where your citizens are not participating, and the only way you're going to have citizens' participation if they trust in the system, right? And I think if I could go back on the negative aspect of smart city, one of the things that I was kind of thinking about, I think you and I talked about it, this could be an extreme situation, right? In the United States, we are a country, a democratic, probably one of the most, in my opinion at least, I'm an American, so naturally I'm biased, but I genuinely believe that we are one of the best democratic system, right? We elect our representative, whether it's a senator, congressman, or the president of the United States, right? And they have a limited term, and they serve our interest. So they are our representative. Now, flip that in a smart city context. This could completely change democracy. In a smart city concept, you're no longer electing your representative. You're electing your ruler. I mean, think about it. Today, a president of the United States does not have the rights, does not have the power. The Constitution does not give the power to the United States to basically, direct how we live. Right? I mean, this is not, a president doesn't have that. A congressman, a senator doesn't have that power. Right? So imagine in a smart city context, you're no longer electing a representative, you're electing a ruler who will have access to every aspect of our life, the data sets. They will know how we live, how we play, how we consume services, how we go shopping, every aspect of it. Where do we travel? How frequently we travel? How long we take shower? I mean, think about how things could go wrong. I mean, so it could completely change the structure of our government, our democratic system, right? So that's an extreme example. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understand where this could go, unless you take all these. So now I guess you want me to come back to the fix, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think it's one of the major concerns around this concept.
Yeah.
So how do we fix it?
Yeah. So I think only way you fix a problem once you identify the problem, and I think it's critical, right? If you don't identify what the problem is, you're never going to try to fix it. And I think that's the reason why we took a kind of a darker trip to this conversation, right? Wanted to make sure what could go wrong. But having understanding of what could go wrong as you design a system to make sure, first and foremost, I guess like I said earlier, you have to update our laws in the book, our existing laws in the book, to make sure this is crystal clear, right? To make sure that as we design and implement these smart city structure, that we don't inadvertently give away control of the data to any specific government, whether it's a city, state, or federal government, right? Or to a big tech. It doesn't happen. Make sure the data is a decentralized model. It had its own proper governance structure, proper security layer, all that, right? So that's number one. The second piece, we have to make sure, of course, the investment, right? To making sure there's a proper investment is going into something like this, whether it's an infrastructure such as a 5G, or you're looking at advanced compute structure like quantum compute, and of course advanced data science and analytics, right? So all these things that's going to create this smart city. And of course many software and hardware vendor, and of course cloud compute is going to be a center of the service model, right? Because it's going to be your entire command center is going to be running on cloud and providing services, right? So we have to make sure all that happens, right? So we touched upon the data. Security is paramount, right? Security, again, we have to make sure that we're not looking in the context of just a consumer, but security as a whole, the entire experience and every single touch point in that experience, right? Has to be completely secure. It has to be transparent. It has to be visible, right? Meaning not only that, saying, hey, we have a good security, trust us. There should be in a centralized system like this, a citizen should be able to access a dashboard by flipping a TV channel or looking at your cell phone and saying what my dashboard looks like, meaning from how many breaches did we have in this city today, or if any, how many accidents, where was it, was the water main break, whatever, right? People have to be able to see those things in real time without any manipulation, without any type of a spin, right? So I think that is the kind of thing that's going to build a trust in the system, and you'll have more and more people start embracing it and start sharing data. Sharing data will open up this whole floodgate of innovation, which today is not happening because of the data is limited, among certain vendors, right?
What about the laws?
Yeah,
Do we need to update the laws?
It's important, absolutely, right? I mean, I think the legislator has to go back to the drawing board. They have to look at smart city as a whole, and not just looking at it from the lens of the network services provider or communication service provider like AT&T, Verizon, and others. They have to look at holistically, meaning every single ecosystem player that are enabling the smart city. That would mean your autonomous vehicle, right? The fleets, right? You have to look at all the cloud services provider. You have to look at data analytics. You have to look at all these sensor manufacturers. You have to look at the device manufacturers, right? All of that. What data they collect. How do they mask the data to personally identifying information? What is the authentication engine that as a consumer, when you're subscribing to this city, smart city services, how do you authenticate without compromising your personally identifying information, but still the city and government has an understanding who is actually consumed the service, but without actually naming or exposing their personally identifying information, right? Things like that. So I think, the updating the law in the book is extremely, extremely important, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why, in a way, I'm actually pretty pleased that we're not the early adapter, because adapting, being the leader in the space, sometimes inadvertently, you may skip some of these critical dependencies. And I think that fact that we're discussing this is going to create a conversation. People are going to talk about it. People are going to think about it, and they're going to recognize, wait a second, we didn't think about this piece. Perhaps we have to also include that as part of our overall strategy, right? So I think, I hope that kind of covers it, right?
Oh, thank you, John. I think from an investment standpoint, it might be fair to say that we should not look at this concept as a smart city concept, but more of how we can improve people's lives without compromising their privacy and civil liberty, right?
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely.
Right? So any closing words?
Well, I'm super excited about the smart city concept. And to our listeners and our viewers, look, this is just one of the topics that we have been discussing. And in our coming sessions, we're going to be talking about really cool stuff. I think we already covered transformation, our first episode. The second one was about 5G. And I think the smart city, I think we went a little bit deeper about multiple technologies. And of course, it impacts transformation. It transforms society. It transforms government. It transforms people, our life, the way we live, right? So I think we're trying to bring the story together, right? We want to make sure that that our listeners, our viewers, the value they get out of these type of sessions, that it has multiple use cases, right, or multiple uses, right? So if you're coming from financial services, you're potential investors, this is going to give you a very different points of view and how you assess your investments in the ecosystem of all the software and hardware manufacturers or even companies, right? If you are a C-suite executive in a corporation and you're embarking in this journey of smart city, you'll have investments, you'll have transformation programs. Hopefully this will give you some ideas that's going to allow you to design your strategy and your implementation plan to alleviate some of the risk.
So I want to say thank you to our viewers and listeners for sharing their time with us. So stay tuned for the future topic. I think we're going to bring something very exciting. We've been talking about a few topics, so we'll have it to you next week. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.